Good evening. I'm Kelda Yoon. U.S. President Donald Trump has made it official, signing an executive order today imposing a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminum imports, including those from Canada.
It's 25% without exceptions or exemptions, and that's all countries, no matter where it comes from, all countries.
Both the steel and aluminum sectors in Canada are highly dependent on the U.S. market, and Canada has been the single largest supplier of aluminum to the United States. Australia's Prime Minister says Trump has agreed to consider an exemption for steel tariffs on his country. Now, a White House official confirmed the measures are set to take effect on March the 4th. This latest U.S. tariff announcement came as a surprise on Sunday. Now, even before Trump signed the executive order, the threat was top of mind for party leaders on the provincial election trail today. The tariffs expected to have a big impact on Ontario, which is a big steel producer. Queen's Park reporter Lorena Redekop has more.
This plant in Hamilton is one of 6 different Ontario steel plants. The local union president says 25% tariffs will make it hard to sell to the U.S. market. He's hopeful the tariffs won't last long.
Everyone knew that it's going to lead to more inflation, higher cost of goods, and we just saw a huge raise in inflation and went through that. So, everyone's expecting things to level off, not the grocery prices and food prices to continue to go up.
He says the good news at that plant is their recent contract guarantees no job losses for 5 years. It was negotiated when a U.S. company bought the steelmaker. The company, Cleveland Cliffs, supports tariffs, saying in the long term, they can make America a manufacturing superpower once again. Canadian steel producers are calling for strong retaliatory tariffs.
Will be devastating on our industry, devastating on our employees, and we really can't let this happen.
The NDP leader headed to Hamilton today to talk to steelworkers.
Make sure that they know that I'm on their side, that I will fight like hell for every single job.
And she blames the previous government for not doing more.
Last time, back in 2018, when Donald Trump did this, Doug Ford did nothing. He relegated it all to the feds. But I won't do that. I'll be there, and I'm going to stand up for our Ontario jobs and Ontario steelworkers.
The NDP point to 2019, when Ford called for the federal government to remove the retaliatory tariffs it had added. Now, Ford is calling for tough measures.
A hard response, and it will wake up our friends south of the border. When someone, gives you a pop in the nose, they're going to get that pop twice as hard back.
The Liberal leader blamed Ford for not doing more to foresee this tariff fight after the first Trump presidency.
He's been caught flat-footed because he hasn't insulated our economy. He hasn't diversified our trade or our trading partners or worked to reduce interprovincial barriers. He hasn't protected our jobs.
Ford is still in the caretaker premier role. He was asked whether retaliatory measures could go beyond the targets of steel and aluminum, and he couldn't say. For example, whether U.S. alcohol could be removed from LCBO shelves. Now, this is all happening a day before Ford and the other premiers take their fight on this issue to Washington. Lorena Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
In Ontario, where half of all steel plants operate, the new tariffs would lead to a seismic shift for one of Canada's biggest exports. Chris Glover takes a closer look at what is at stake and how industry watchers are preparing.
When it comes to Canadian steel, more than 90% of exports go to the U.S. Ontario is the hub, home to half of Canada's steel plants. Billions of dollars in trade now in jeopardy, staring down the barrel of 25% U.S. tariffs.
They will be devastating, but challenging on both sides of the border, in fact, not just on Canada. The $20 billion of steel trade that's basically exposed to this idea.
Here's how the $20 billion steel trade broke down in 2024. Canada sent the U.S. $15.9 billion worth of steel last year, making it by far the U.S.'s largest supplier. The U.S., meantime, sent Canada $4.1 billion worth. And Canadian companies tell us they're already seeing canceled orders from Americans.
We certainly experienced a slowdown in the amount of orders that were being placed and reluctancy to continue with orders as usual. And not so shortly after, we started experiencing the cancellations, which I'm sure that a lot of Canadian manufacturers are also experiencing as well.
The Canadian Steel Producers Association represents 15 companies worth $15 billion. They produce about 13 million tons of steel products in Canada a year, employing 23,000 workers, jobs that are threatened if American buyers dry up in a post-tariff environment.
It's never fun having to consider that proposition, but I think one of our biggest priorities is making sure that we keep everyone employed and retain everyone for as long as possible.
Of course, everything could be stressful, but as entrepreneur, we need to face the situation and try to find solutions.
But finding new buyers is complicated. Steel is heavy and therefore expensive to transport. Plus, there's already an overproduction of steel globally.
For the whole economy, I mean, it's a wake-up call to government. It's a call to action for business. Of course, businesses are scrambling. Investment is being delayed. There are concerns about jobs, and there's nothing good about this.
We know tariffs on steel will hurt Canada, and we don't have to look too far back to see it. President Trump implemented 25% tariffs on Canadian steel in 2018. A year later, in 2019, a deal was reached ending that trade dispute, but the temporary shock to the Canadian steel sector was clear.
It's enormously difficult, right? And this shows obviously that the chaos will continue, the goalposts will continue to move, and the U.S. administration, it doesn't appear, will be a reliable partner anytime soon.
Canadian steel producers say Canada must immediately retaliate, putting tariffs on U.S. steel and doubling down on buying and selling steel within Canada.
We need to find mechanisms immediately to use more domestically produced steel in Canadian projects. There's no reason why some of the largest infrastructure projects that have gone on in this country in the last decade did not use Canadian steel. That needs to change tomorrow.
New urgency from Canada's steel industry demanding Canada's reliance on the U.S. market must be totally rethought, no matter how this latest trade dispute pans out.
In response to Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs, City Councillor Brad Bradford is proposing a tax cut for industrial properties and small businesses.
This is a moment where we need to provide some tax relief. And if we want industries like Leland to stay here, if we want to keep these 180 manufacturing jobs in Scarborough, in the City of Toronto, these are the types of steps that we have to take. Read the room. We're under attack.
Bradford says the proposed 25% tax cut will help protect jobs and provide urgent relief of more than $10,000 for more than 3,000 manufacturers in this city. City Council is expected to vote on the proposal tomorrow. All right, back to the provincial campaign trail. All the main parties are promising to improve access to family doctors. Now, at the moment, some 2.5 million people in Ontario don't have a primary care provider. Queen's Park senior reporter Mike Crawley compares their plans.
Louise Lee's family doctor announced retirement plans 2 years ago. Finding a new family doctor has taken up much of Lee's attention since then.
Followed every Facebook group we could think of. We'd ask neighbors, we were talking to colleagues, family friends. If anyone mentioned that they were going to see a doctor, we were asking them to inquire on our behalf.
She describes the experience as stressful, and it's influencing her views of the provincial election.
Definitely doctors and healthcare and our healthcare situation in general is a big factor for me in how I'm going to vote.
Hi! Some parties hope a lot of voters feel the same.
Wonderful.
The Liberals promised to spend $3.1 billion to add 3,100 new family doctors.
That's my pledge, that within 4 years, everyone will have access to a family doctor. You can have that, or you can have a fantasy tunnel or a mega spa.
A similar take from the NDP.
Would you rather have a family doctor than have a luxury spa in downtown Toronto? Yeah, it's about time, right?
The New Democrats would spend more than $4 billion and add 3,500 new family doctors. Not a single PC campaign event so far has focused on family doctors, but Doug Ford does get questioned about it.
And we're investing $1.8 billion to make sure every single person, no matter every infant, every child, every adult, every senior, is connected to a family doc.
The number of people without a family doctor in this province has been growing steadily for years.
I'm happy that candidates are speaking about family practice, about connecting everyone to a family doctor. What I'd say is if you're a voter, you should be thinking about who do you trust to deliver on that promise.
Nothing has made Ontario's family doctor crisis more visible than this. 1,000 people lined up in the snow in Walkerton for a chance to get on the roster of one physician starting a new practice, an event the Liberals have used to hammer the PCs.
That's Doug Ford's Ontario, and that is shameful, and that is what we are fighting against.
So, how will the family doctor issue affect the results on election night? Well, consider this. The age group that is most likely not to have a family doctor is people aged 18 to 34. That's also the age group least likely to vote. Mike Crawley, CBC News, Toronto.
Scarborough Health Network is celebrating the grand opening of their new imaging department today.
A revolutionary, state-of-the-art diagnostic imaging concourse. It allows us to increase our total procedures by 25,000, bringing up our total per year to 300,000.
The 36,000 square foot space will feature 2 new interventional radiology suites. The facility will also have a 3T MRI, as well as other advanced imaging modalities. A licensed cannabis retailer in Toronto is speaking out after a delivery of $10,000 worth of pot was dropped off to the wrong location, left in an alley, then stolen. It happened in late December, and the general manager says she's still waiting for accountability. Farah Morali has more.
Unpacking cannabis deliveries, a routine practice for Taylor Caldwell. But her last delivery of 2024 was anything but that.
Nobody showed up. We didn't hear anything back. When I did finally get a hold of that same delivery driver who called us, he said again that it would be there in about an hour, and still it never showed up.
Caldwell contacted the Ontario Cannabis Store, which supplies the legal pot for licensed retailers. She says they told her the shipment was delivered, but apparently not to her.
It was actually the OCS who got back to me and said, we contacted the owner of your nearby shop. He said he did accept that delivery, and then he told us, he told the OCS that he had dropped our delivery in the back alley.
So Caldwell checked her cameras and found this. At 11:59 p.m., an hour after her store closed, someone starts dropping off boxes. They continue until about a dozen or so are delivered and seem to finish around 12:02. At 12:04, another person appears. They open a box, then moments later, proceed to take them, one by one by one, until they're all gone. Caldwell says about $10,000 worth of product was taken, with a retail value of between $15,000 and $17,000.
I felt a little betrayed, to be honest.
The shop has since been compensated by the OCS, but she questions what's been done to investigate.
I want to know why they haven't done anything, why there hasn't been any follow-up. And additionally, with at least $10,000 worth of cannabis now on the streets.
It's unclear why the boxes were signed for or who left them in the back alley for the shop. We visited the neighboring store, but were told the owner wasn't there. He hasn't responded to our messages. In a statement, OCS told CBC Toronto issues with deliveries are rare, saying in instances where a product is mistakenly delivered, OCS policies require stores to reseal any open boxes and contact the OCS immediately so that we can retrieve the product. In this instance, it said, OCS policies were not followed.
It is frustrating for retailers who spend all this time and energy following all of these rules.
This lawyer says he hears from frustrated licensees who aren't seeing swift responses from the AGCO that oversees regulation.
There definitely doesn't seem to be a uniform enforcement or a consistency in the enforcement.
In a statement, the AGCO told CBC Toronto it maintains a robust inspection and enforcement program. It confirmed it's investigating and said, given that this matter is complex and remains the subject of an ongoing police investigation, we will take appropriate action once investigations are complete.
We have no idea who's accessing that cannabis.
Meaning it could be longer until Caldwell gets the answers she's looking for on a delivery that went terribly wrong. Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
Welcome back. The trial of two girls charged with second-degree murder of a homeless man continues this week. Today, one of the defense lawyers is cross-examining the lead detective. The then 14 and 16-year-olds were among 8 girls who attacked Kenneth Lee in a downtown Toronto parkette in December 2022. The Crown alleges the younger girl was the one who killed Lee. Detective Rodney Benson has taken the judge through hours of footage of the night of the attack, pointing out where he believes the 14-year-old struck Lee with an unidentified sharp object. Today, the girl's lawyer asked if the detective could see her holding a pair of scissors, to which he replied he's not sure what the object is. Police did seize 2 pairs of scissors from the 14-year-old girl's pocket after her arrest. A pathologist, though, said while they can't rule it out, it is unlikely that scissors caused the fatal stab wound to Lee's heart. It's an iconic photo capturing a silent act in the fight for human rights. A black-gloved fist raised on the victory podium at the 1968 Olympics in Mexico City. Now, one of the men in that picture was in Canada recently for Toronto Metropolitan University's Black History Month celebrations. Our Dwight Drummond sat down with John Carlos to talk about that historic moment and being threatened with death threats for his actions to now being honored for them.
I said, Coach, I said, man, I got a dilemma. He said, what's that, John? I said, look, man, I want to give Tommy this race, but I don't want this dude to think I'm a Rudy Poop. And boy looked at me, he smiled, and he said, John, he says, you've always been your own man, and you're going to do what you think is right.
It appears to be John Carlos in the lead. Tommy Smith is running second. There goes Tommy Smith. A big move by Tommy Smith, and as they go to the wire, it's Tommy Smith, a jubilant winner.
It was this silent gesture that crashed through the air like thunder and shook America in front of the world.
I was disenchanted the fact that they called the Olympic boycott off. We couldn't get enough individuals that understood the necessity of a boycott.
Because people were saying you should boycott instead of what you did, but you tried to...
Well, we tried to organize a boycott, and many of the athletes understood why it was necessary to boycott, but it was hard to get by that carrot.
Yeah.
And they got the carrot dingling in front of them, go for the goal, go for the goal.
That's what they worked their whole lives for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of them said that, man. I trained all my life to go to the games. But we didn't have the right to tell them, man, you have to sacrifice this.
Yeah.
All we could do is give them the choice to make a decision. They chose to go. I was disenchanted with their choice. I was sitting in my house and said, I'm not going. And God has a way of communicating with me. I tell people I'm not a religious guy, but I'm a spiritual guy. And he shot it to my brain. He said, John, you can stay home. But the question is, do you think that they will represent you, the person that goes in your place, on the victory stand the way you would like to be represented? And from that point on, I said, I'm going to the games. When I spoke to Mr. Smith and said, Tommy, I want to do something, man. I'm disenchanted about the fact the boycott was called off. What's your take? He said, I'm with you. When he said he was with me, man, it was like the sun opened up, the sky opened up, man. I can see the doves flying. Tommy said he had gloves. He had the black scarf. I had a black shirt, sweater, to cover up my USA uniform. We were all wearing black socks. The Olympic Project for Human Rights badge.
And you were the founding members of the Olympic Project for Human Rights.
Correct.
As you just went through what you were wearing when you did that, what did each mean? Can you go through what each? The black glove meant something.
Well, let me just put it to you in terms of, they classified it as black power, okay?
But you?
And I always made the metaphor, the power was in my black butt running down that track. That was the power. But then when you sit back and think about the fist, they say black power in terms of a militant aspect of it. The black power was, here's 5 black entities or 5 people of color. They're kind of frail individually. But look how powerful they became when they came together in unification. And that was the essence of the fist, to show people if we're going to get anything done, we had to come together as one to do it.
Okay, Colette is here with a look at the forecast. And Colette, yeah, really snowy weekend. I know some areas still dealing with a lot of snow squalls, right?
Yeah, and this is the kind of thing, right? We had this impact where it's a lot of shoveling and that kind of thing. You need your recovery. You're going to get a couple of days for that recovery, and then we've got another one. In fact, 2 in our pipeline.
It's coming.
Coming our way. So I hope you're starting to feel good and that you're in shape for it on Wednesday, because here we go again. And if your question is, well, why are we seeing these series of storms? I'm going to show you that when we take a look at the upper winds and the jet stream. So that's really that steering force bringing those systems right towards us, that storm track. It also tends to divide the colder air to the north. We're seeing extreme cold warnings in all 3 prairie provinces right now, and the milder air, record-setting warm temperatures to the south. So it's that dividing line, and the temperatures there and it being that dividing line are really important for how this system is going to be coming in. This is for later on Wednesday night into Thursday. And what we have in play now is a special weather statement from Environment Canada. As the event gets closer, I think we'll see this defined differently and more specific when we have a better handle on the exact tracking of the system. And by the way, the winter weather travel advisory, that's for what's happening now with that lake effect snow and what we've been seeing. We've still got the squalls on the eastern shores there of Georgian Bay, where we still have some whiteout conditions. But those winds continuing to ease overnight tonight. A few flurries perhaps tomorrow afternoon, coming back into the GTA, and then this is that main event midweek. So into the afternoon hours, it pushes in with this particular model. You see it brings it in largely as snow into the GTA, the pink getting into that freezing rain or some of that mixing with some ice pellets. And then it's going to push in and bring the temperature up on Thursday and change it over to rain. If this tracks a little bit further south, which a few of the models are suggesting it will, it keeps us in the colder air for longer and means higher snowfall totals. On the backside of this, will snow squalls return? Yes, they will. Just showing you some of the snowfall potential then. This particular model, this is still a few days out. This will get fine-tuned, but putting the GTA in that over 10 to 20 centimeters, in fact, pushing it 20 centimeters plus. Right now, Environment Canada is kind of going with 15 centimeters plus. So I'll keep tweaking this for you. Know that you get a bit of a break essentially overnight tonight. -10 is going to be the low. Tomorrow, the wind's a little bit lighter, some afternoon flurries, -2. Just watch out midweek, and then another one coming towards us Saturday.
So a lot more shoveling to come.
Yes, it is, with those breathers in between.
Yeah, thanks so much, Colette. That's all the time we have tonight. Thanks for watching. Have a great night, everyone.